Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to be calling the meeting in the city of Bloomington Township to order. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, Madam Clerk and everyone. Could you please call the roll?
Trustee Kearns. Here. Trustee Bolin.
Here.
Trustee Motney.
Here.
Trustee Becker.
Here.
Trustee Hendricks.
Here.
Trustee Ward.
Here.
Trustee Lee.
Here.
Trustee Crumpler.
Here.
Trustee Millewamble.
Here. And do we have any public comment, Madam Clerk?
We received no emailed public comment, but we do have one person registered to speak in person, and that's Serena Fish, after you read your statement.
Okay, sounds good. Let me find said statement. Okay, public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to those, not city council, but to the City of Bloomington Township trustees. It is also an opportunity for the city council, the Bloomington Township trustees to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the township trustees do not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased.
Thank you. My name is Serena Fish. I spoke about this at the city council meeting, committee of the whole, but because our supervisor wasn't at that meeting, I wanted to be able to look at her and say, thank you. It was well done. You and Leslie conducted an unpleasant situation. What you came up with and how it was handled was democracy at its finest. And the way it was done, everyone in the room could count the votes. Everyone in the room could count how many people stood up. There was no question. It was a yes or a no. There was nothing in between. So thank you for doing a great job. She already talked to her. For doing a great job for what you're paid to do, because it was a tough crowd. So thank you.
There's no further public comment.
Okay, thank you. And now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
moved by trustee Hendricks, second by trustee Bolin. And we have the handy dandy thing. So 1A for yes, right? And
Yeah, and you're fine because Dannenberger is not here.
oh, okay. All right. Good. Is mine showing up? I'm just kind
There we
of.
go. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you. And there are no regular agenda items. So we're going to move on to report by elected officials, starting with Township Supervisor Skilroot.
I do want to, I know that Serena had said that, thank you to me, but it really wasn't me. It was my staff and definitely Leslie, that headed up that Debbie Stillwell was the other one too as well. It's nice when and Dave Stanzik, the moderator. Yes, thanks for reminding me. Anyway, I don't have a whole lot to say today, which is a surprise, but, we do have one challenge in our township at the moment, and that's our workfare program, our POTS program. So I'm not getting qualified people to actually be the workfare coordinator right now. So I'm opening it up for any thoughts on your part. If you have any suggestions of somebody preferably who's retired that is able-bodied to collect pots and drive the U-Haul and kind of facilitate out at the work site, that would be helpful. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Oh, sorry. Trustee Ward?
Sorry, couldn't unmute myself fast enough. Is it a full-time job? What's the pay?
No, it's a
What-
part-time. It's 19 hours.
Okay.
We keep it under 20 so that we don't
Yeah.
have to pay benefits and that IMRF isn't collected at that point.
What's the pay?
That depends, probably around 20 to 21,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
And it's year round?
It's
Or-
more seasonal. This is a heavy, heavy season right now. And I'd say by August, maybe October, somewhere in there, it's down to 1 day a week. It's 2 days a week right now. Pretty much to collect just the pots and trays. And then after that, it is being at the site probably the rest of the time of the 2 days that collect pots, but then also maybe just the 19 hours split so that we have available person at the warehouse. It's not working as well as I wanted it to for NAPCA people to be in charge over there. NAPCA is, I think you understand the senior program. I've mentioned it before, National Asian Pacific Senior something. Anyway, I think there's a lot of just some issues because none of them should really be supervising per se, but doing the work only. So we need somebody in there to do the supervisory role.
So is there like I don't know, a Facebook post or something that you could share that we could put the word out?
I could do that. I haven't done that because it just happened today for the second person.
Yeah.
So I think that how about if I send an email instead? Is that okay?
I can deal with an email. I'm
Okay,
certainly
because I
happy
don't
to
want
share
just a
that.
whole bunch of individuals applying that aren't qualified. I've tried that one already. So, okay, thanks. I'll do that.
So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if this would present an opportunity to collaborate with the city. Maybe there's an opportunity to look for the role to be covered, somehow through shared staffing. Just a thought.
It's a good idea. I can look into that.
Okay. Thank you. Township Assessor not Scudder. Start with Skay.
Scoot.
Scoot.
I just watched the couples retreat this weekend again. Encouragement.
My friend.
The tax bills went out in April, to be paid in June and September. We get a lot of phone calls at that time. This time of year, everyone wants to know why their taxes went up. Our role at the assessor's office is to locate, list, describe, and value all the property in the city, not to tax anyone. So, and when we do our valuation is based on 33 1/3 of market value, which is if your house will sell for 100,000, then we would be assessing it at 33,333. So, and our valuation date is January 1st of every year. So the questions we get is how come my taxes go up? And so I kind of just wanted to reiterate what we do. Their tax bill is affected by their assessment, of course, but at the point when they get their tax bill, there's nothing we can do about adjusting an assessment unless there was a Scrivener's error or something that is definite, then maybe sometimes that doesn't even fix what the problem is. So I want to make sure you all understand what our role is at the assessor's office and my role as the assessor to do those things according to state statute. And if you get tax bill questions, they might have to refer to a different source than just the assessor. Any questions?
Yeah, I just have a
Trustee
quick
Bowe?
question. Does the assessment, or is the assessment affected by, neighboring sales? Like if the sales went up 20%?
It is affected by sales. We have to put a value on all 27,000 properties, whether they sold or didn't. So the assessments are year over year, and the sales that come in are measured to the assessments. So if the assessments are below those sale prices, then we have to increase the assessments to reflect the fair market value of property in the city. So, and that's all monitored through the Department of Revenue in Springfield. So they get the same sales information and assessment information. If we weren't doing what we do at the local level, then the state could do it to the whole county at the same time. We do it at the township, the county does it by the county, and then the state can do it by the whole county or the whole state if they needed to do that. So it's three different levels of monitoring so that we keep values at market value, and then we divide it by 3 for the assessments. And as always, people should look for their exemptions that they qualify for: senior, disability, homestead. Those are the main 3. Veterans discounts.
And if they want a challenge, they have to meet the deadline.
The challenging stage comes in the fall when we turn our assessments to the county. So I'll be letting you know when that comes and when the rules are, but it's typically September, October timeframe for the city of Bloomington. It's different in different townships in the county. Some people turn them in normal in the city, both are towards the later end because of the amount of work that has to be done between January 1st and turning in their books.
All right, seeing no other questions, then we are going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
motion by trustee Boland, second by trustee Hendricks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the City of Bloomington Council to order. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing if you're able for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Kearns. Here. Councilmember Bolin. Here. Councilmember Matney.
Here.
Councilmember Becker.
Here.
Councilmember Hendricks.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Here.
Mayor Millawample.
Here. And we are going to, well, do we have public comment first or, oh no, after, okay, sorry. So we're gonna move to recognitions and appointments. First of all, I want to recognize Detective Ken Nowatzki. Is he here? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Detective Ken Nowatzki is with the Bloomington Police Department and just wanted to recognize him and his unit for working with city staff in order to reach this agreement. We very much appreciate that, the spirit of collaboration and this bargaining agreement will be is on the consent agenda and will be voted on in a few minutes. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And we also have on the consent agenda another collective bargaining agreement with IATSE. But I don't believe we have anybody here representing IATSE.
I think we might have two staff members present.
Two staff members.
There,
Yes,
right?
oh, okay, hey, hey, guys, how you doing? Okay, good. So just wanted to recognize you as well, and thank you very much for working with members of our negotiating team to make this agreement work. Really appreciate it. And next, we are going to have a recognition of a life-saving award recipient from the Bloomington Fire and Police Department as requested by the Police Department and Fire Department. So at this point, I'd like City Manager Jurgens to step in and provide a few comments.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And if we could have the officers and officials step up. Is there a presentation that? Is there a presentation?
Do not seem to have
I don't
any.
think I did.
No?
All right.
Just a second.
Maybe hugs?
All right. Maybe only you. Sergeant Nowers, we wanted to take this opportunity to recognize you and all the others that you serve with. I don't have all the details in front of me, but I know about a year ago, there was an incident where you were actually able to revive a member of this community that was waiting and standing at an event that collapsed. I know others were involved with that as well. But I wanted to take this opportunity and for the entire council, as well as the community, to simply recognize the work that you did, the outstanding work that you always do and you continue to do for this community. I believe this is the month where we recognize those who save lives with our law enforcement and first responders. So we wanted to highlight this and just show our appreciation to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
City Manager, I also can go ahead and read the list of names that we've recognized in the packet in case others are present.
Yes.
All right. The individuals the police department would like to recognize, you just recognized Sergeant Nowers, Officer Samantha Berry, and please stand if you're present. Officer William Shelton, Officer Brent Smallwood, Officer Hunter Clark, Officer Tyler Elson, and then Public Safety Dispatcher Kevin Busfield, Public Safety Dispatcher Rebecca Hall, Public Safety Dispatcher Sarah Wolf, Public Safety Dispatcher Nick Newcomb, Public Safety Dispatcher Jace Brame.
Thanks. And Chief Symington, is there anything you want to add?
Thank you, City Manager and elected officials. Whenever we have an opportunity to acknowledge and recognize the good work of our staff, it is quite a remarkable opportunity just to say thanks. We train for that very purpose, whether it's a public safety dispatcher, our uniformed officers to save lives. And CPR is one of those events. Given instructions for CPR on a 911 call, for instance, are things that we are very good at, and it's demonstrated through the ability to save lives. And so thank you, Sergeant Hours and everyone else who was acknowledged tonight for having the bravery and the courage to do what they could do and follow their training to save the life of another. So thank you for the opportunity to recognize their good work.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
We
Right.
also, Yep,
Can
I was just going to say, I can go ahead and proceed with the fire department's
Yes.
list.
Yeah, could we take a picture?
Yeah, of course, let's do it.
And Chief Symington was also part of this specific one, although he doesn't want to take credit for it. So.
All right, and the individuals the fire department would like to recognize are Captain Mike Chan, Captain Chuck Casagrande, Captain Eric Owens, Bill Farnham, engineer, Tom Korsanek, engineer, Tony Salvatore, EMS supervisor, Matt Merriam, firefighter, Trevor Wilson, firefighter, Tyler Zimmerman, firefighter, J.R. Folker, firefighter, Brad Meyer, firefighter, Vern Dickey, firefighter, Kyle Walder, firefighter, Eric Davison, firefighter, and Jay Capodice, firefighter.
Like to offer a few words?
Great. So again, thank you for recognizing our guys. These were all individuals that in 2023 responded to somebody that was actually in cardiac arrest. Person was not breathing, did not have a pulse. And through our treatment, all these individuals made a difference. And on those calls, the people ended up being discharged from the hospital. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And I actually happen to know that individual, and he just emailed me, a couple days earlier to have to meet and have lunch and get together. So he's doing really well. So thank you all very much. Next, we're going to move on to a recognition of board and commission appointments and reappointments, and I'm going to turn it over to City Clerk, Madam Clerk.
All right. We would like to recognize, if we can have the slides, please. We'd like to recognize to the Special Commission for Safe Communities, Ryan Bertrand and Christopher Cashin. And if you're present, please stand so we can recognize you. Thank you. Also to the John M. Scott Healthcare Commission, Laura Passetti, Catherine Porter, and Dr. William Ray. And for reappointments to the Citizens Beautification Committee, Johnny Painter, Gina Lavazza. To the Cultural Commission, Faisal Rashid. And to the Historic Preservation Commission, Don Peters, the Japanese Sister City, Don McBride and Stephen Campbell. And last but not least, the Zoning Board of Appeals, Terry Ballantini, the John M. Scott Healthcare Commission, Karen Schmidt, and Bradley Secord.
Okay, thank you all very much. We really appreciate the work that you do. The city could not do it without all of you, so definitely appreciate it. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to move on to public comment.
Yes, we received no emailed public comment, but we have 3 people registered to speak in person, and we'll start with Serena Fish after you read your statement. Thank you.
Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It is also an opportunity for the city council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased.
Thank you. Again, I'm Serena Fish, if you weren't here before. So I have 2 things. One is I'm watching all of the slides. There's another thing that goes on downtown. The second Saturday of the month are sidewalk sales. So I'd kind of like to see this up here too. The other thing that I'd like to speak about is my favorite subject, the tent city. I realize that city is working on the issue, but the issue is expanding. The tents, one showed up the other day, the church building with the old Y. It disappeared quite quickly, so I'm assuming they themselves put them out. Another one showed up outside of the Township building. Again, they disappeared fairly quickly, so I'm assuming somebody. But the tent city, as I've said before, is limited in space. They have a waiting list to get in. So now the tent city has advanced to both sides in tents under 51 going north and along the trail, which goes under both, past where it is now, over the railroad tracks, and along the fence of Evergreen Cemetery. And it's growing. I'm thinking it's a pretty big liability to have these people camping along this trail and not knowing when one of them may be drunk, high, whatever, and they're within a couple feet of where people are running, walking their dogs, riding their bikes. And you're facing a major liability if you don't move them and move them soon. Thank you.
All right, next
you.
up we have Eric Haney, and then to follow will be Don Haney.
I'll be pretty quick. Here to talk about the annexation of West Washington Street. I live at 2406 West Washington, and where they're looking at annexing is the 130 acres that surround the east, south, and west side of my home, and the 30 acres across the street from me, which means I would be an island in the middle of the annexation. I know it's a foregone conclusion that a solar farm is going to go in behind my home. I'm not sure why the city wants to annex when there was a plan that was presented to the county that was perfectly acceptable, with 811-foot easement from my property line to the solar panels. Now that the city has gotten involved and wants to annex, a new plan has come out. The first one we got had solar panels from Washington Street all the way back the east side of my property, 70 feet off my property line, all the way across the rear of my home, 70 feet from my property line, from east to west, which encompassed two sides of my house completely. So no longer are there cookouts in the backyard and looking at beautiful natural scenery. The plan changed from a Friday to a Monday to just being behind the house and going 160 feet from the property line. And my biggest worry is that once this is done, that the plan's going to change again. And it can go back to what it was, because I know municipalities don't have the power to say no with the state of Illinois. They've passed laws that say they can do this. And I'm worried about this annexation and being in this island with my property surrounded by a monstrosity, for one. For two, we like to shoot our neighbors' target practice on both sides of us. Once this is annexed, we can no longer shoot back there just in case there's a ricochet. There's nothing behind us for miles. We can't shoot back there. We can't have backyard parties and, like I said, look at the natural land.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Don Haney.
Hi, my name's Dawn Haney, and I live at the same place. I am here to speak a little bit about the setback of solar farms. There are other countries that have been doing solar longer than the United States, and they actually suggest setbacks from residents from over 900 feet. And there was a House bill that was passed in March that would allow the county to increase it from 25 feet. Request the 20 or the 500-foot setback at a minimum from the property. I am worried that there will just be chain link fence all the way around me, and I will feel like I live in a prison at that point. So other than that, I'm pretty sure my husband covered the rest of it. Again, just the setback is a really big concern of mine. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
There's no further public comment.
Okay. So now we're gonna move on to the public hearing, a public hearing on annexation agreement with David Ruska. Is that how you say the last name? Ruska? Ruska, okay. For the property commonly known as 2440 West Washington Street, as requested by the Economic and Community Development Department. So I'm going to go ahead and call to order this hearing at 6:21. And I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Jurgens and staff to present.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll go directly to our Assistant Director of Economic and Community Development, Kelly Pfeiffer.
Great. Good evening, Mayor, City Manager and Council. David Haruska with the assistance of Christopher B. Burke Engineering and in partnership with New Leaf Energy, the developer, have submitted a request for approval of an annexation agreement for approximately 132 acre property, commonly known as 2440 West Washington Street. The applicant seeks to incorporate the property and construct a community scale solar energy conversion facility on a portion, approximately 1/4 of the premises. The balance of the property is planned for continued agricultural operation. City Council is required to hold a public hearing prior to adopting any annexation agreement. City Code also requires the council approve or reject the annexation agreement on the basis of the facts presented at the public hearing, the recommendations of the Planning Commission, and the recommendations of city staff. A public hearing was held by the Plan Commission meeting on May 1. Significant public testimony was offered, with a primary concern being an incorrect waiver request for the height of the arrays that was misinterpreted by staff in the production of the memo. To allay concerns, the annexation agreement now includes a height restriction to 10 feet at full tilt. Adjacent residential property owners desired more buffering, visual and auditory. The agreement commits the developer of the solar facility to plant evergreen vegetative buffer along the entire north border of the field. From the east, the arrays will be set back in compliance with the code. Some attendees suggested moving the entire facility southerly, but the facility being placed northeast of the future Charlotte Lane and the north-south Collector Road intersection. The presented placement will facilitate the future transportation network plan for West Bloomington. Concerns were voiced over noise. A noise study submitted by the applicant indicates that the transformer, the source of the noise, will be over 1,100 feet away from the nearest residence, which is over twice the distance where noise level would be considered ambient background noise. Other provisions of the agreement are that future development will be compliant with city codes and the facility will be decommissioned in compliance with state provisions. Planning Commission forwards a positive recommendation for the agreement and the application of agricultural district zoning upon annexation to allow the balance of the 132 acre parcel to remain in agricultural production. Staff, with the amendments made to address public concerns voiced during the public hearing, recommend approval of the agreement as presented.
Okay. Thank you. And at this point, we will go to public input. I know we've already heard some, but we'll ask anyone from the public that wants to testify to come forward. Individuals will be allowed to speak only once, and we ask that you keep your remarks reasonably short so that we can get through everyone that desires to speak. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody who registered?
We did not have anyone register to testify.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And the time is now 6:25. Thank you. We are now moving to the second public hearing, a public hearing on an annexation agreement with Joseph and Carrie Scharf. Okay. For property generally located south of terminus of Cary Drive between the Constitution Trail and West Washington Street, and the property commonly known as 1803 West Washington Street, as requested by the Economic and Community Development Department. I'm going to go ahead and call this hearing and open the hearing at 6:26. And should I turn it over to City Manager Gleason or to Ms. Kelly? 5 minutes? Okay, let's go to Kelly.
Certainly. Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, and Council. Joseph and Carrie Scharf request consideration and action on an annexation agreement for two very different parcels of land. The first is a 30-acre farm that provides the contiguity for the parcel to be developed partially as a solar facility. The second is an already developed 3-acre parcel surrounded by the city at 1803 West Washington Street. The first is not proposed for development, so it's forwarded with an agricultural zoning upon annexation and delays street, water, and sewer developer obligations until such time as subdivision is planned. However, it assures dedication of right-of-way for future widening of West Washington Street, an important easement that will give land south of it access to sanitary sewer and a connection to the Constitution Trail. Agricultural zoning will allow agricultural production to continue after annexation. The second is a 3-acre developed parcel of land that is served by an on-site well and septic system. The agreement allows those systems to continue until they fail or until redevelopment is planned, in which case normal connection fees will apply. The agreement does waive the subdivision ordinance. The parcel was created outside of the provisions of our code, but is an existing buildable parcel for all intents and purposes. The 3-acre parcel is zoned M2 general manufacturing in the county and would be zoned M2 general manufacturing upon annexation to the city. City Crier is required to hold a public hearing prior to adopting any annexation agreement. A public hearing was held by the Plan Commission meeting on May 1. Public testimony expressed concern that the West Bloomington parcel would develop into solar if zoned agricultural and suggested residential zoning. While the parcel is adjacent to sewer, water is not yet available. Staff and the solar representative found no projects in the queue for connection to the grid other than New Leafs. Given the intention to continue agricultural production, agricultural zoning district is the Planning Commission's and staff's recommendation upon annexation for the West Bloomington parcel. For the 3-acre developed parcels, no attendees spoke in opposition for the M2 general manufacturing zoning nor the agreement. Planning Commission forwards its a unanimous recommendation for approval with presented zoning districts, and staff concurs.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, I will ask again if anyone from the public who wants to testify to come forward, and individuals will be allowed to speak only once. And we ask that you keep your remarks reasonably short so that we can get through everyone that desires to speak. So Madam Clerk, do we have anybody?
We had no one registered to provide testimony.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and the time is 6:29. Moving on to the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Boland. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Crumpler. And we're voting electronically. Okay, so the consent agenda passes. No nays to announce. Thank you. And now we're going to move on to the regular agenda and a consideration and action on a resolution authorizing an annexation agreement with David Haruska for the property commonly known as 2440 West Washington Street, as requested by the Economic and Community Development Department. And should I pass it on to you or Kelly again, or? Okay.
Certainly. The annexation agreement for consideration tonight would allow the development of a community scale solar energy conversion facility to develop in a location that will facilitate the planned future intersection of Charlo Lane and the to-be-named North-South Collector Road and secure the related right-of-way dedication commitment. No waivers or incentives are part of the agreement. The developer and petitioner addressed prior publicly voiced concerns by larger than required setbacks, evergreen screening along the north side of the facility above and beyond the code requirements, restricting the project to a 10-foot height limitation, which is 50% of the legally allowed height in the city. The proposed agricultural district, as recommended by Plan Commission and staff, allows the agricultural production to continue, as this parcel is not yet serviceable by water and sewer. The applicant sent all required notices to agencies and governmental bodies as required, and no comments have been received. The agreement and its related solar facility development meet important comprehensive goals of promoting energy conservation and alternate energy generation by ensuring at least 25% of energy comes from renewable energy sources and providing a safe and efficient network of complete streets to serve transportation needs. The agreement secures vital right-of-way for future West Bloomington emerging area while delaying street, water, and sewer developer obligations until such time as subdivision is planned. Staff recommend approval of the presented annexation agreement.
Okay, thank you. Do we have either motion or questions?
I have some questions. I'm assuming, maybe I shouldn't, that the right of way will probably be the extension of Rivian roadway?
No, this property, this entire property is east of where Rivian Way would be
okay,
extending
Okay,
southerly.
then it's the next one then.
Yeah, so then there will be a different north-south
Okay.
collector road
Okay,
in between
okay.
there.
The other question I had, which probably would be more appropriate, other than that land that is set aside for infrastructure, is it possible or probable that the rest of the agricultural land will become used with solar energy?
There's no plans right now to subdivide anything other than the simple parcel that is being leased by New Leaf.
Okay.
So,
Because my understanding from the packet is that solar on agriculture is by right. Is that correct?
yes, but there is a tremendous site plan approval process. And in this case, a subdivision would be necessary and you usually have a few years warning.
And it would
before
have to
they
come
could-
back and
yeah.
everything. Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember, oh, okay, Councilman. Let me go to, because I saw your light first earlier and then turn it off. So, okay, Councilman Martin, you have to.
I'll move approval.
Okay. Is there a second? Now we can have more discussion if needed.
Second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Crumpler. Councilman Martin.
I'd like to better understand the differences in our requirements in the city versus what the county's requirements would have imposed. That, in looking back at the Planning Commission notes, that seems to have been something where this was in process perhaps with the county. And then, and some of this, again, I'm trying to understand from meeting minutes, so asking for mercy on that and maybe you to help set the record straight on it. But that by annexing into the city, we would then offer the developer more lenient expectations. Can you help me kind of unpack that, if you will? Because, you know, underscoring that is this issue of the opportunity to venue shop between jurisdictions, between locations, between elements of government. And it just seems that that may be part of this and why it didn't go forward with the county.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to some of that. This process started with the county a couple years ago. I arrived here in July and noted, I believe it was the September of October, that it was being forwarded with a special use in the county, and I saw the site plan. The site plan indicated that it was going to be right in the middle of where we planned a major road intersection. So it's in doing that we talked to the applicant and said, is there a way that you can structure this so our right of way and our ways to get utilities and roadways through there is reserved? At that time, we also said potentially that annexation would be possible, except for it's not contiguous to the city limits. That's hence the next case, which actually provides its contiguity. So to my knowledge, the setbacks in the county are different than in the city. I would say that there are larger setbacks in the county, but also the process is a special use. So what those setbacks would have to be would be part of that process. So we have prescribed setbacks. In this case, there is a 20-foot section east of this property that isn't readily available. You can't really see it. That is set between farms. And so we have the 20-foot buffer and the driveway and then the solar arrays. So when we talked to them and said they were willing to push it farther north, we were conscious of the distance from the residential areas. It's 160, 165 feet from the property line. They did see an original one somehow that had it around. The arrays were never designed to go around the house. It was more that that was the piece of property that was going to be affected. So the special use process gives the county the determinations for various setbacks. We have prescribed setbacks. It meets it, it well exceeds, ours is 50 feet in the front yard, and 15 feet on the side and the rear. So yes, and generally they are less, those setbacks are less than they would be in the county, but I can't speak specifically about what the site plan would have been, and what would have been approved at the county because it didn't go that far.
Okay, I'm going to try to summarize what I heard.
Okay.
This was in process.
Mhm.
The city presumably saw a potential conflict with another plan into the future associated with transportation. So the city somehow then kind of engaged in those conversations directly, and here we are today on May the 28th. I guess in hearing this, you know, my concern is that, you know, we've heard from residents, and while they're not residents within the city limits, I'm still, you know, certainly people who we should be thoughtful about. By coming to the city and by the city engaging, it seems as if we have allowed for a less favorable setback requirement from the perspective of the neighbors in the area. I'm wondering if consideration was given to making this a level playing field with the county and having the expectations be the same as what the county would have afforded for this same property.
And before you answer, I want to be sure we're on solid ground, Chris, just in terms of, and this is not directed at you specifically, it's just to be sure that what we are making a decision on is kind of based on the testimony that we receive, so that we're not getting more new information, right?
Correct. The council's decision's limited to the facts that are presented during the hearing.
Mhm.
So any questions or issues that go outside of those facts aren't properly considered by the council in making its final decision.
And also what was presented at the planning commission.
Yeah, what was contained in the reports that you
Okay.
received, that information part of those reports are part of the hearing process. So
Okay.
yeah, they're included within the hearing.
Okay, I thought about that because I know that's oftentimes we do that. We want to ask more questions and everything, so just want to be sure. Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Okay.
So I believe what we've received is draft minutes for that meeting, which in some areas would be truncated. I understand the meeting lasted several hours. I heard the number 5
Mhm.
hours. Is that accurate?
Yes, there were 3 public hearings, so
Okay.
it wasn't all for this case.
And just for context, I think one of the sets of minutes that we received was 7 pages and one was 3 pages. So if we're disallowed to explore this, it's okay. Just for me, I'm trying to understand in a thoughtful way the difference and how we got here today.
Yeah, and I think if, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if if there are substantial issues that we find, we can always send it back to the planning commission, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Sure.
And Councilmember Motney, I think you could also ask, was that issue explored in any of the proceedings? Would that maybe get to your question as well?
The only thing I counsel you on or caution you on is that the further you get from the record, the more you risk finding somewhere down the road that you didn't decide on the facts that were considered either by the annexation, planning commission, or within the hearing itself. So yeah, I think exploring a little bit into that area is probably okay, as long as it's based on the testimony that was presented in the annexation hearing itself.
Sounds good.
But like I said, the further you stray from the record, the more risk.
Well, I certainly don't want to introduce additional risk through just simply trying to understand so I can vote appropriately. I do think setting aside this particular issue and this discussion that we're having now, we should or could perhaps foresee other situations in the future where our requirements perhaps are more lenient than surrounding governmental entities. And I think we should develop a point of view on that because it just seems to me that otherwise that would introduce conversations and conflicts between the governmental entities. Seems that might be foreseeable. I sense that there's support for this along the group. Respect that our boundaries are the public hearing today. So with that, I don't have any further questions.
Okay. Councilmember Knopfler?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kelly, for being here today. You mentioned, and I just want to return to this and make sure I understand. You mentioned some amendments that were put in place in response to the testimony at the meetings. Could you just review those real quickly for me? So again, that I can make sure that I'm informed on what exactly happened. Thank
Certainly.
you.
One of the primary amendments was that they've imposed a height limit of the arrays to be 10 feet from ground level. Our ordinance allows 20. That was a very significant concern that they would be too tall. In order to shield the neighboring property to the north who spoke this evening, they found a fence wasn't an adequate enough buffer. And so the petitioner has put into the annexation agreement, they would plant an evergreen buffer along there that should provide some sound and visual breaks. So those were the primary things that were determined, and they are secured inside the annexation agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any other questions, so we're ready to vote. Okay, so the item passes. There are no nays to announce. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to item B on the regular agenda, a consideration action on a resolution authorizing an annexation agreement with Joseph and Carrie Scharf. Okay. For property generally located south of terminus of Cary Drive between the Constitution Trail and West Washington Street and the property commonly known as 1803 West Washington Street as requested by the Economic and Community Development Department. And I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
Okay. The presented annexation agreement will enable the contiguity for the annexation of the parcel you just heard. So the parcel that will house the solar facility is 500 feet from our city limits. This 30-acre parcel, which is part of this agreement, would provide that contiguity for annexation. The agreement of the farm parcel also secures vital right-of-way for the eventual widening of West Washington and an important easement for the future sanitary sewer and connection to Constitution Trail while it delays the street, water, and sewer developer obligations until such time as subdivision is planned. The developed parcel rests at the northwest corner of a city intersection, Washington and Caroline Streets, and is surrounded by city lands. Annexation protects those properties by limiting it to the same permitted uses and zoning code provisions. Staff recommend approval of the presented annexation agreement with the zoning districts agricultural and M2 manufacturing as requested and recommended by the Planning Commission.
Okay. Is there a motion before we do questions?
I'll move approval.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Ward and second by Councilmember Hendricks. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready to vote. Okay, the item passes. There are no nays to announce. And now we're going to move on to item 9C, presentation and discussion of fiscal year FY 2025, general resurfacing and pavement preservation programs, and the state of the street and sidewalk network. And two, consideration and action on a resolution authorizing waiving the technical bidding requirements and authorizing city staff to negotiate an agreement with Road Construction, a division of United Contractors Midwest for the FY 2025 General Street Resurfacing Program as requested by the Department of Operations and Engineering Services, otherwise known as DOES. And I'm going to pass it over to City Manager Jurgens.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a presentation that the city's been putting on for a number of years now. And we take a deep dive tonight into some of the costs, some of the amount of work that we're able to do, and also preview the work that we're going to be doing in the upcoming year. This year, we've got a unique opportunity based on the fact that we've got a lot of lead lines that we need to replace in the city. And we need to take a pause from our typical program as we figure out how to get our roads and our lead lines and our sewer that we want to replace into a solid program. So this year, we've got an opportunity that Director Cothey will talk about to address some of the newer roads in our community that I think are actually some of the worst offenders in our community. With improving some of these roads, they're going to have a very high impact. Some of them have 10,000 people driving on them a day. A lot of them have, 5,000, 6,000 people driving on them a day. So actually excited about the work we're going to be able to do in this upcoming year. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Cothey.
Thank you, City Manager Jurgens. Mayor and Council, thank you for allowing time for us to talk about an update on street resurfacing. I want to recognize and thank all the staff that do the work behind the scenes, preparing the information that you're going to see tonight. This presentation, along with a supplementary report, will be available on the Bloomington Streets webpage tomorrow, and additional details are provided in that supplemental report. Next slide. A lot of you have seen this slide before. We use a PASER rating system for our pavements, and we've used this for more than a decade now. And the pictures illustrate the different pavement conditions from a scale of 10 being in excellent condition to 1 being failed. So next slide, please. This is a summary table that provides current ratings by functional class. Functional class are minor arterials, collectors, and local streets. Examples of a minor arterial would be like a Washington or Oakland Avenue. Collector might be a Colton, and local streets are like your Jefferson or Monroe streets. A lot of times they're your local streets that serve low volume residential neighborhoods. And you can see the overall system ratings broken down, and then to your right is a grand total column that provides ratings for the entire city network. And on the far right is a cumulative percent. And so you can see that, for instance, nearly 60% of the streets are rated a 6 or better. So it just gives you an idea of where everything falls in the overall system. Next slide. This shows a bar chart from a historical perspective dating back to 2010, the overall average ratings for the street network, and through 2024, which was the most recent updates we've done. We try to rate every street at least once every 3 years to keep it current. Next slide, please. We use a similar PASER 10-point system for our sidewalks. This is kind of something that was grown in-house. You can see the pictures that represent the different conditions. So we were using the same idea of that 10-point system for rating of the sidewalks. Next slide, please. Overall conditions of the sidewalk ratings. Once again, you can see To the far right, a cumulative percent. And so here you can see that 80% of the sidewalks are a 6 or better rating condition. Next slide. We have nearly 30 years of HMA prices included in this chart and table. And you'll see that there's, it's a little hard to read from a distance, but there's a lot of detail here where rows down below indicate the type of contractor mix, and then the bars, not in every year, not every type of contractor mix is used. You'll see more to the right in the more recent years. We're doing more with the SMA, which is a stone matrix asphalt. It's a more costly product, but it's also proven out to be more durable, especially on those streets that have heavier traffic, like more, bus traffic, more truck traffic, that type of thing. It's a more durable product and holds up better. And you can see that the general trend is over the years that prices keep going up. This price represents the price per ton installed. So it's not just, getting a ton of asphalt delivered. It's actually the placement of that asphalt to the final product. So there's a number of factors that the prices jump around a little bit year to year, number of factors that can play into that, including what the street section is. Is it a rural or urban section? Are there multiple lanes? It's complex intersections involved, the adjacency of the resurfacing work, and so forth. Can all factor into the price variations from year to year, but the general trend is definitely up. Next slide, please. We have here in this chart a mix of the dollars per year for the different contracts. Once again, nearly 30 years here of history. And then the orange line shows the lane miles done in each of those years. And so you can see the dollars spent versus how many lane miles have been taken or resurfaced in those particular years. The chart is in millions of dollars to the left, and then lane miles to the right is how to read that chart. Next slide, please. Another variation. This is the resurfacing and sidewalk cost per a 12-foot lane mile, once again in thousands of dollars. So what this references is that not only are we doing resurfacing work, we also end up doing sidewalk work as we do resurfacing to provide for the ramps and other sidewalk repairs. And so you can see what that cost over roughly the last 20 years has been for lane miles of resurfacing and sidewalk work. Next slide, please. This is for 4-inch sidewalk, which is a typical sidewalk in a residential area. This cost is based on removing and replacing it. It's not just material cost, but actually installed cost to remove and replace sidewalk. And you can see over the last 20 plus years, these are the contract prices that we've had for that work. This does not include ramps or other specialty work. This is just for your basic sidewalk. So, and this is based on work that's bid on an annual basis. Next slide, please. One of the things that we're looking at doing this year is a kind of a pilot project, a sidewalk study. This is something you've heard a little bit about before. This is looking to use an opportunity to see, a lot of the work has been done in the recent years by contracting the work. What can we do with in-house staff? So we're looking at partnering with Public Works, creating a team of 4 to 6 employees that will do some different sidewalk projects and keep track of the costs involved. This is going to begin in June here very shortly, projected 30-day completion. And this is, like I said, in partnership with Public Works. I want to recognize the city manager and Mose Rickey, Josh Hansen, Colleen Winterland for their partnership in this pilot program. Next slide, please. With this pilot program, we'll be looking at key performance indicators, like I said, keeping track of the labor and materials and equipment used so that we can do a fair comparison between the work that we can do with in-house staff versus what we do with our contract work. Next slide, please. This is a pie chart showing, we have 10 million in the budget for asphalt and concrete work. We ended up with 10,900,000 because as part of the work that's going to be done this year, we're also including Meadowbrook, which was bid as a separate project, but with the costs involved, we allocated the resurfacing work into the regular program. So some money got pulled in as a budget amendment for that work. And there's also some ARPA funds left to be spent. So you can see here that we're, allocating a significant amount of the pie, 7.2 million to resurfacing, which also includes some resurfacing on Locust Colton, which is not eligible for the IEPA loan. And then you can see some of the other parts of the pie. One of the things that I'll draw your attention to that's new for this year is the concrete subdivision streets. We're allocating 1 million for that. We'll talk about that a little bit more shortly. We've also allocated more to the streets, alley, and sidewalk maintenance program. We're planning to do some additional sidewalk work under that contract above and beyond what we've normally seen. And of course, we have also our pavement preservation with the rejuvenators and the high pressure slurry. And we'll talk about that on some of the next slides here. Next slide. So for the resurfacing for FY25, as city manager said, we regrouped because of the pending issues with the lead service line replacements and work that we don't know exactly where it's all going to happen yet. And so we regrouped and we focused on some arterial roads towards the east side, which includes GE Road and Fort Jesse Road. We're putting together some alternates because sometimes when we do special work like this, we might get favorable pricing. And if we do, hopefully we can do a little bit more work. And so potentially here between the Meadowbrook subdivision, Ridgewood, and then the streets, the arterial streets that are planned, we could be doing anywhere from 16 lane miles to 22 and a half lane miles, depending on how prices come in. And then for pavement preservation, like I said, we're planning on doing the high pressure slurry, which was well received last year. This would be the second year for that. And then also the rejuvenator, the reclamite, which we've used for a number of years now. Next slide, please. Concrete streets. There's a great need in some of the subdivision streets that are concrete for road work. And you can see in the pictures some seriously distressed sections of concrete pavement. These locations are in the Golden Eagle and Golden Eagle South subdivisions to the east of Airport Road between GE and Empire Street. And these locations would be bid in a separate contract for concrete pavement repairs is what the plan is. Next slide, please. The map here shows the locations where we're planning on using reclamite, the rejuvenator. Like I said, we've used this for a number, more than 10 years now. We typically apply it in the first year after a street's been resurfaced. And then a second treatment comes usually around years 4 or 5. And you can see on the map those streets that are picked as first treatment and then second treatment. Next slide, please. High pressure or the pressure pave, the high pressure slurry map. We're looking at streets in Somerset, Pinebach, Fairway Knolls, Hawthorne Hills, and Hawthorne 2 subdivisions. The streets need to be in a certain condition to, be beneficial with this treatment. And so we've carefully selected those streets for this particular type of pavement preservation. Next slide, please. For the FY25 proposed resurfacing map, we'll have the streets that are in red are part of the base bid. So Fort Jesse from Hershey to Lakeshore Drive, General Electric Road from west of Hershey all the way to Tawana Barnes, 6 Points Road from Oakland to Longdon, Ridgewood in its entirety. Ridgewood is that little street off of Main Street up by IW, and then Meadowbrook subdivision in its entirety, which is down off of Lafayette and Morrissey. And then as alternatives, we're showing Fort Jesse in blue from Lakeshore to Keisner. And then as a second alternative, alternate Oakland Avenue from Prospect to Hershey. So if we get favorable pricing, potentially we could do all of those. If it's not as favorable, we may have to, you know, do the base bid in one of the two alternates. So next slide, please. The program schedule. We've got a number of different contracts that are in the works or have been awarded recently. The next step tonight, as noted, was approval of a resolution to waive bids and negotiate a contract with Row Construction, a division of UCM. Once we negotiate those prices, the contract will be brought back to council for approval at a future meeting. Within the city, there's a lot of ongoing road work from prior year contracts, as well as, you know, sidewalk contracts for this year and so forth. It's likely that most of the work from the FY25 contract will be done in calendar year 2025. In addition to the city's work, as noted, IDOT has a lot of work ongoing or coming soon. Currently, they have the first project of Illinois 9, which is on West Market and Hinshaw area, White Oak Road. Within the next 3 to 4 years, IDOT is going to be doing a lot of resurfacing work. And then we'll also be looking at coordinating our future resurfacing work with water projects, including lead service line replacements. Next slide, please. So I want to recognize again and thank those that have been part of things, including Assistant City Engineer Bob Yale, who's in the audience tonight. Josh Hansen, who's also in the audience tonight, has helped with the sidewalk pilot program. And of course, City Manager Juergens for his leadership, and also Public Works Director Mose Rickey. So I'll open it up to questions.
Okay, well, thank you, Kevin. I know there was a lot of balls in the air, and we definitely appreciate the work that you're doing with Mose and others to make it all work. So thank you so much. Are they, Councilmember Kearns?
Mr. Kofi, thank you for your presentation tonight. I'm always very interested in streets and sidewalks, and I know everyone else is too. I guess my question is, it occurred to me that, you know, when I'm thinking about the rating system of 1 to 10 on the sidewalks, I'm going to talk about specifically that. So I appreciate and recognize that we have a lot of work to do on our sidewalks. And so like that might be the priority, but have we thought about is there information that your team has gathered about where sidewalks do not exist currently? Where that is, you know, where it's like that, what's that rating? 0, you know, something
Yeah.
like that, or like an intention of that, you know, because I really liked the paragraph on page 14 in this packet that we received about sidewalk, curb, and gutter program, that the city is working on a 10-year sidewalk master plan, and has some really nice sentences about, you know, seeing a beautiful family-friendly city. Sidewalks are part of that equation, about walkability and connectivity and all the great things that brings communities. And so I just wonder where we designate like the sidewalks that don't exist, because there's definitely places that they, you know, you have sometimes a sidewalk and sometimes not. So like sometimes you're on the sidewalk, sometimes you're in the street, or there's just, we've completely quashed the ability to have that connectivity because there just wasn't even a thought of sidewalks in that area. So.
So there's a lot of different parts to what you just said.
Yes.
So for instance, in the new subdivisions where there's sidewalk and you have to jump in the street because a house isn't built yet, that's part of the developer obligations, is to provide the sidewalks in the new subdivisions. And so the developer a lot of times leaves it to the home builder to complete the sidewalk when they build the house. And so unfortunately, we end up with sometimes where the subdivisions take a long time to get built out, and then you end up with pieces of sidewalk that are missing kind of in between. That's one issue.
And what about neighborhoods that are not new?
Yeah.
Where, is that like
Right.
a thing that happened then when they were built at the time?
There was a time when there wasn't as much focus on sidewalks, and I think that is generally in the World War II era, just after World War II. Historically, the core of the city was really focused on sidewalks. If you think about the years before 1900, before automobiles really became a thing, everybody, either was a pedestrian or a cyclist. And so sidewalks were a big thing. It seems like right around that World War II era with affordable housing and what have you, there's a section of the city that was built without sidewalks, which you're alluding to, and we recognize that. And then there's just some areas that for whatever reason, never got the sidewalks. And we always look for those opportunities to partner, especially with other agencies. Some examples are with IDOT, because a lot of times some of the highways don't have sidewalks along them. So we take those opportunities to partner with IDOT. For instance, Morrissey, is going to be rebuilt a few years from now, hopefully. That will include a side path, either sidewalk or side path or both. East Empire, no sidewalk. When you look at Towanda Avenue all the way out to the, Airport Road and even beyond, there's no sidewalk accommodations. You can cross at certain intersections, but you can't walk along it. So once again, there'll be a side path as part of that project on the north side of Empire Street. We've partnered with Connect Transit over by the McDonald's on IA Drive. They recently added some bus stops there. Connect put in part of the sidewalk. We put in part of the sidewalk, but it got accommodations from, over by the urgent care all the way out to the bus stop by the McDonald's now. So we're excited that we can deliver some things like that. But you're right, there's a huge area of the city when you think along like Mercer Avenue and some areas like that that don't have sidewalks. We've like Ryan Drive a number of years ago, we added a sidewalk on that street, had no sidewalk. It's actually part of a school walking route to Oakland School, So, but to your point, we currently don't have budgeted to continue to add sidewalks. We look for opportunities to partner where we can, but there's no budget per se just to start taking on all the sidewalks.
Okay, and then, so I guess that was kind of the last bit of my question is, so would that mean that if someone who didn't have a sidewalk, is that eligible as part of that 50/50 program or not?
We normally don't include that as part of the 50/50 program. I mean, if there was a real small gap, we might plug that in, but when you're talking, some of the neighborhoods are just, entire blocks of homes
Right.
that need to be filled in.
Okay,
So, yeah.
thank you.
Councilmember Motley.
First of all, Kevin, thank you so much. I mean, this was the most data and the best level of specificity I think we've seen. So I really appreciate it. And I want to call out also the great collaboration with Josh and others regarding this focus on sidewalks. So thank you for that. I think it's a great project that will serve everyone across this community. I wanted to talk specifically and get your thoughts on vertical displacement and grinding. As we've seen Public Works in the last few months get really responsive for potholes, we're going to be there 24, 48 hours, whatever that cycle time is. It seems to be really in a rhythm. Vertical displacement with sidewalks and the grinding program, is that something that staff does or is that contracted out?
That's been contracted out. Could it be done by staff in the future? Possibly. They might need some other equipment to do that. But, right now we've been contracting that out as part of the sidewalk program.
So when I see the pictures of your current kind of moving toward a Paiser rating type system for sidewalks to let you know, are you gaining ground or not against those average ratings? The grinding piece on the vertical displacement seems to be a huge issue that's resulting in people becoming injured. And I know there have been quite a few examples of that where people are tripping on simply sidewalks that otherwise would be in good condition, but the vertical displacement is an issue. Perhaps we could look at the grinding, whether we're insourcing it or whether it's contracted out, but putting a turnaround time around that. And if we were able to be responsive in short order on that vertical displacement piece, I think we would see, a lot fewer injuries, whether it's walkers, joggers, rollerbladers, cyclists, et cetera, from some of those vertical displacements, which occasionally can be several inches, in a sidewalk that otherwise looks pretty new and stable. That would be awesome. And, then just one other question on one of your slides where you're talking about the number of miles resurfaced. I just was wondering and I don't know the slide number, but if that is all in and inclusive of your alternative surfaces like your pavement preservation, or if that is specifically limited just to your sidewalks or your streets that have been actually repaved. And I think that was, I don't know what page it was on your slide deck. 12-foot lane miles resurfaced. I don't know the page number of the slide, but the one that shows fiscal year 2023, 19.6. Just reconciling that number to just prior notes. Is that all in inclusive of pavement preservation?
I'm gonna look to Bob. No. Yeah.
That's
I-
resurfacing.
Yeah. I didn't think it was, but I
Okay.
wanted to make sure I don't answer you incorrectly. So, yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward, and then Crumpler, and then Lee.
Thank you for this. I appreciate the thinking that's going into the decision of holding off on some of the street repairs until we can focus more attention on what's going on beneath the street so that we're not tearing up stuff that we've just done. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yes, I would love it if we could do more immediately, but I think I appreciate the wisdom of that. I will repeat, I think probably for the third or fourth time since I've been on council, a request that we get just as clear about a plan for sidewalk replacement and repair as we are about having a plan for street repair. I see the wonderful map that you shared that shows just in red, purple, green, whatever, what's up next. And I struggle to find on our website, if it's there, please somebody show me, but I struggle to be able to find a schedule, a plan of like, this is when people can expect this to happen. And I get calls from residents who are saying, what about this sidewalk that doesn't exist? Or that it's a sidewalk to nowhere. And I don't know what to tell them when I'm told, well, it's not on the top of the priority. So I just want a map that I can point to. And if I have to say to people, it's not going to happen for 5 years. Okay, I'll say that if I have to, but I'd love to see us create something like that. And I'm looking here, our sidewalk master plan is from 2015, and it references an ADA transition plan from 1992. We just went round and round in this council to come up with an ADA transition plan. We need to update some of this because it speaks to accessibility as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Crumpler.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kevin, again for this presentation. I know in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of conversations about trying to get more efficient, to get things done, in a way that responds to the public desire to have streets and sidewalks repaired in a more timely fashion. And I wonder, part of this item 9C, you're asking us, to waive the technical bidding requirements for authorizing city staff in agreement with Rowe. That sounds great. Could you talk about what will that do in terms of getting things done in a more timely fashion? Because I see what they're getting out of it. I wonder what we're getting out of it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And, we do test the water, so to speak, every so often. Last year, we did bid the resurfacing contract, and we only got one bidder. We also look for opportunities if we can carve off a smaller resurfacing contract and get multiple bidders, we'll do that because we believe, the competitive bids are the best, for the public. But in the absence of having another bidder for these bigger projects, it makes more sense to negotiate it. It's a more timely process. We don't have to go through all the formalities of advertising and addendums and all these other things. We can work directly with the contractor to say, is there more efficient ways that we could go about this? You know, we'll have a plan that we'll give them and say, hey, these are the streets we're going to do. These are what we think we want to do. And some of that can go back and forth a little bit to hopefully get a more, cost-effective approach, and also an approach that will be delivered in a quicker time frame as well. So that's why we're looking for this to await bids this time.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, hi, Kevin. Thank you for addressing this hot topic. I know there's a lot of people that have eyes on these. I just had a question on figure 18 that talks about the base bid, the additive alternate 1 and additive alternate 2.
Yes.
Can you explain a little more about that process and how, like, if the bid does not come in, then does that mean additive 1 and 2 doesn't happen, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the way that works is when we get the prices back from Roe on this, then we'll evaluate, are we able just to do the base bid? But if we get really good prices, could we do the base bid and 1 and 2? Or could we just do the base bid and 2 and base bid or 1? Because they're different scales. So it just gives us more flexibility to present something to you that says, hey, we got some really good prices. Let's do it all. Or let's do just the base, or let's do the base and 1 or the base and 2, that type of thing. It gives some flexibility there. If you notice, you'll have seen that in some of the other, bids that end up on the consent agenda usually for you. Is we're using that as more of a strategy to get as close as we can to the budget amount to be the most effective with, the dollars given to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bolin.
Yeah, real quick, I appreciate Councilmember Ward's suggestion about the sidewalks, but from observation, correct me if I'm wrong, that would it correlate with street resurfacing or repair? Because when you did Oakland, West Oakland, all the curbs and sidewalks were brought up to 10. So is that just an observation that it happens sometimes, or is that the goal of the department?
No, it's a goal to keep, the sidewalks that we have in good repair and ADA accessible. It's a requirement when we do resurfacing that we bring those into ADA accessibility by, the current standards. There's nothing in ADA that says you have to put in a sidewalk where one doesn't exist. But obviously, from a standpoint of serving citizens that are pedestrians and have needs, it would make sense as a city to want to do that, right? But at this point, we're focused more on maintaining what we have than adding more, so to speak. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that it would be nice to have, sidewalks in every neighborhood for sure. So.
Well, I mean, until you get that sidewalk, map put out, could I assume that sidewalk repair would be happening when the street is being repaired?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, and for those of you that might have been on Wood Street, for instance, for, the Memorial Day weekend, you'll have noticed that there was a lot of work that had been done out there with new ramps and inlets and sidewalk repairs mid-block. That was in anticipation of the resurfacing's coming, because we've been doing it in 2 different contracts. So we've gotten a little bit better pricing that way by splitting it to 2 contracts. So, but yeah.
It goes noticed.
Thank you.
Well, some of us didn't notice because we were out throwing candy. City Manager Jurgens.
I was just on the sidewalk conversation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're looking at updating the sidewalk master plan this summer, correct? Or is that a different master plan?
Yeah, no, we're going to start working on it. It's going to take a little bit to get it done, but yeah, we know it's, needing to be done, but, I don't think we'll be able to get it done this year, but we'll start on it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make the council aware of that is on our radar. They are going to start on that this summer. Also, to Councilmember Boland's point, yes, when they're out there doing a street, you can assume they're going to do the sidewalks as well. But that's partly, and they do a little other work outside of that, but that's partly, in my opinion, how we got a little bit underwater on our sidewalks. So the efforts that we're talking about with the public works staff, maybe putting a little bit more to another special contract, we're going to be trying to target some sidewalks outside of our norm of just touching the sidewalks when we're repairing the streets. So a lot more to come on those types of issues, but wanted to share that. And then also just real quick, wanted to put a plug out. If you know, this information and a lot of other information is available on bloomingtonstreets.com. And so the public, or you can go there and find that information as well.
Awesome. Councilmember Ward?
So just in follow-up, I appreciate that the master plan is due for review and in 2025, it's a 10-year plan, right? So I appreciate that. What I'm asking for specifically is more of a map or a list of it doesn't even have to be a map, but a list even of what the rating is for the sidewalks. Because if we're actually evaluating the sidewalks, that information has to be out there someplace. So could we share that on that website so that we know that the sidewalk at, I don't know, 123 North Main, and I'm making that up, is, you know, rated at a whatever.
Yes, absolutely. I could foresee that. And I think that's something that Josh and his team will be working on. Make it more user friendly to the public. And that's the type of information that I think will go a long way.
Because the reality is that yes, we do a good job when there is a street repair, but not every sidewalk stays in pristine condition until the road needs to be repaired. There are plenty of sidewalks that are in horrible shape and the road isn't going to be repaired anytime soon because they're at different levels. And so I value the idea of creating a separate track for that. Thank you.
Councilmember Hendricks?
I would just move to approve.
Okay, was there a motion initially? I don't think so.
Second.
right?
I don't think so.
Okay, so seconded by Councilmember Boland. And let's go. Okay, the item passes. No nays to announce. Well, thanks again, Kevin. I know you have a difficult job, a lot of streets, you know, for us to catch up on and also sidewalks. But I think you guys have responded with, trying to be creative and doing more work than we have in the past. I do remember from my first years as a council member, we weren't doing as much. So we definitely appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you. I think we are set for the finance director's report. And would you like to say a few words, Jeff, or should we? Okay, all right, then we'll just go to you, Scott.
No, okay. Okay, before I launch in the April 30th, 2024 financial report, just a couple comments about the funding for streets, I guess. So just reminding council and the community, you know, we have dedicated restricted revenues for the asphalt and concrete fund, specifically the 8 cents local motor fuel tax. And for FY25, we have $4.2 million budgeted for that. And then 10% of our home rule sales tax gets allocated to the asphalt and concrete fund. So we have a little over 30 million in home rule budgeted for FY25. So that's 7.2 million related to restricted revenues. And then we are doing a subsidy from the general fund transfer to the asphalt and concrete fund of 2.5 million. So to meet that $10+ million commitment, For next year, there is a subsidy related to the general fund. I'm going to reference that here just in a little bit again. So, but wanted to remind council, that's kind of how we're getting to that $10 million plus some of the ARPA and then some allocations related to Meadowbrook. So April 30th, that's our fiscal year end. However, we are not finalized for the year. So as I've mentioned several times, we have revenue delays specifically with sales tax. It'll be June before we have final sales tax numbers. There's a 1 month delay on our local taxes. Final invoices are coming in. We have audit entries, but we have kind of homed in on our projection. But we will be covering April 30th, FY24 year end for 2 more months after this month. So over the last few years, we've done the year end review in May, June, and July, and that gets us pretty final. And then we'll start the new fiscal year in August because we really don't have a lot of information for that new fiscal year, partially due to those delayed revenues and that kind of cycle we have from the state. So next slide, please. So major tax revenues, I'm just going to jump down to the bottom. So, through this period, 10 months of home rule sales tax, state sales tax, 11 months of our local, we're $9 million ahead of budget. Currently, we're projecting to finish $10.5 million over in tax revenues for the general fund. You'll see that number in just a moment. For FY25, a number that's not up here, but we're getting close now. We increased our major tax revenue budget by 10.6 million. So you can kind of connect the dots here. We're coming in for fiscal 24, pretty much in line with what we took the budget up for fiscal 25. And of that 10.6 million for fiscal 25, about 8.9 million of that is related to the general fund. So again, I'm going to reference back to, that of those revenue increases, some of the additions in our expenditures in FY25 that are, taking up that revenue increase. We're doing that additional subsidy to the asphalt and concrete fund. We have a shortfall related to our public safety pensions, a big increase last year, and then some added staff. And some of that added staff is, related, or not just added staff, but contractuals related to a lot of the extra projects and engineering, et cetera, that we're doing. Next slide, please. Oh, wait, go back, please. One more comment. Sorry. So in the news, and I've referenced this the last couple months, is the grocery tax with the state budget and the governor's kind of initiative to repeal that. It's been in the media the last 3 to 4 days that it looks like that will go into effect, but not until January of 2026. So essentially, with this next budget cycle, when we're starting up in September, October of this coming year, talking about 2026, we'll have to incorporate, about a 3-month reduction related to grocery tax, and we're estimating the 3-month might be 500 to 750,000. But that's good news that it's hard on local governments that it's going into effect, but it's good news that it's delayed, and it gives us time to get visibility on it, have discussions, et cetera. Now, next slide, please. So general fund revenues, always like to do a review. General fund is over half of the city-wide budget, or nearly half of the city-wide budget, largest fund by far. It's primarily funded via tax revenues. It funds, public safety, parks, et cetera. So we have a projected year-end column now. That's what I'm really focusing on tonight and have been in the next couple of months. So you can see, our tax line, we had almost $100 million in our budget, where we're coming in at 110.4. That's the 10.5 that I just referenced. I'm scrolling down a little bit. Charges for services. This is a little bit of an eye catcher because we budgeted 17.4, but we're projecting 15.2. And that is due to that accounting change that I've been referencing related to ambulance revenues, where we bill for a run. And then when the payment comes in from insurance, we were writing that off as an expense, but we're netting that against revenues now after discussions with our auditor. So it's showing a lower revenue figure there, even though that GMET program has had tremendous benefits for the city revenues and the fire department in particular. So if you look at the left, the revised budget, we had $20 million in use of reserves. So we used reserves. A lot of that was a transfer for Locust Colton to the water sewer storm funds, $146 million total budget. So 20 million of that being for use of reserve, which is not real revenue. So net of that 20 million, that'd be $125.7 million in generated revenues. And then we're projecting to come in at 138.5 million. So that's about a $12.7 million increase over the budget. Most of that related to those taxes. And then we have ARPA funds that from an accounting standpoint, they weren't included in the budget. They got deferred into deferred revenue. And so we're recognizing those. So that 10 million and the $3 million for ARPA are kind of making up the difference. Next slide, please. General fund expenditures. In the projected, we have compensation, salary and benefits. It's coming in about $3.1 million higher than budget. And this is due to staff adds, compensation increase during, mid-year related to the salary study. Contractuals coming in about $1 million over. I wanted to highlight this because you can see out to the right in the notes due to BCPA artist fees. The BCPA, it's had a great year. If it has a great year, it's going to have higher expenses. So, if you're just isolating your review on the expenditure line, looks like we're over budget. But in that scenario, when we have a business model generated expenditure like that, it's actually a positive sign. And then down a little further in other expenditures, you can see on the very left, it's $9.3 million revised budget, but we're projecting 4.5 million. That's 4.8 million under. That's related primarily to those ambulance billing adjustments that now we're posting against revenue. So revenues were only down by 2. This is down by 4.8. So you can see the net is very positive there. And then on down the projected year end related to reserves. What we're projecting for year end reserves, last month we showed 48.4. This year or this month it's dialed up just a little bit related to some adjustments to 48.6. Next slide, please. So just real briefly on enterprise, we're going to be highlighting sewer fund tonight. For water, I wanted to highlight this as an example of kind of how our financials work. You can see actually about 2/3 of the way down the page, a budgeted use of fund balance was 11.6 million. And you can see that the total year-to-date gain/loss is $11.2 million loss. So, when we budget use of reserves, we're essentially budgeting a loss for the year. And so if you refer to it that way, it kind of makes your eyes open up, but it's a budgeted use of reserves. It's a budgeted loss. So that's a perfect example of how that works. The other thing I'll just highlight, quickly, we've been kind of bragging on golf over the last few months. Year to date, actual almost 3, I'll just call it $3 million. The budget was 2.6, so 115% over budget for the year. Next slide, please. Sorry, going a little long tonight, but we're rotating through the enterprise funds. Tonight is sewer. This is we went through sewer, I believe, in August. So some of this will be a repeat. This gives me an example. I was looking at the sewer fund narrative. So the narratives are the write-ups we have in the budget books. It's a description of the activity for each fund. And it says that the mission, I don't know if it exactly says the mission of the sewer fund is to ensure the steady flow of sewage from its point of origin to the sewage treatment plant. So, take that for how you hear it. I thought that was sounding kind of funny, but that's its primary focus, is to take the sewage and make sure it gets to where it needs to go. Focusing on the budget column, because the revenues and everything are tracking fairly well. You can see that charges for services are 7.9 million. So roughly $8 million in operating revenues for this fund. This fund, along with water and storm, with the water rate increases, the annual increases are going to be now based on an inflation index CPI for water, sewer, and trash, which should more accurately increase the revenues in pace with the expenditure increases. On down, you can see we had $4 million budgeted in miscellaneous revenue. We do cash accounting basically for our budget. That was borrowing for East Street Basin. This has been rebudgeted for FY25, so you see 0 year to date. we're not going to be executing that this year. And then in transfers in, almost 3.1 million. This was a subsidy I referenced as part of the $20 million use of reserves from the general fund. The general fund transferred cash to water, sewer, and storm to help accelerate the Locust Colton Phase 4 and 5 construction. Council approved that. We subsidize it from the general fund, taking advantage of a positive year the general fund is having, saving these enterprise funds literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in interest expense. And also the revenues, the charges for sewer are based on water consumption. So next slide, please. Expenditures for the sewer fund, they're primarily capital expenditures. So we have the $2 million annual sewer rehab. There was Locust Colton, a budget amendment, and $4 million for East Street Basin. That makes up the $9.5 million in capital expenditures, plus some of that is in contractuals. But you have 1.5 million plus 400,000 for benefits, so 2 million in operating expenditures related to compensation. If you net out the CapEx, we have operating expenditures about 5.8 million. That number's not up there. This is just kind of give you a flavor for how well the fund is doing. So we have operating revenues I referenced of 8 million, operating expenditures of 5.8. So the sewer fund is running on about $2.2 million surplus every year to fund the $2 million in recurring annual rehab, and then also to pay for larger projects. And a lot of that has to be put through the IEPA loans or bonding. And then just a couple of comments out to the right, you can see that we have capital expenditures of 9.5 million, only $1.4 million year to date. So 8 million remaining, but you can see 4 million is East Street Basin that's going to get rebudgeted. And then we have 4 million in encumbrances. So these are on POs related to projects. So it's not in our year to date, but we show that as an encumbrance when it's getting netted out of the reserves. And next slide, please. And then reminder to the community, all these documents and presentations are online at basically the finance webpage, and you can navigate to the budget documents and see the monthlies and all the budget documents, which should be published very soon for FY25. Questions?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Scott. As always, very informative. I do have a family commitment that I have to attend to. So I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of Mayor Pro Tem Bolin. So thank you all very much.
Does anybody have questions for Mr. Rathbun? No? Okay, thanks, Scott. The next item on the agenda is city manager's discussion.
Yeah, thank you. And to Scott Rathbun, I've obviously changed up a few things, but one thing I definitely want to leave on the agenda at least once a month is the finance report. That is something that Tim brought to the city a few years ago when he first came. I think that's been well received by the council and the community. So do continue to look for those reports once a month. And again, if anybody has any feedback on that, happy to receive that. The other thing I want to say before I formally start my report is this council has done a lot, but with the action you approved tonight, you'll probably be best known for the council that finally fixed GE Road. And just want to say thank you for that. And I hope that that road gets fixed, and that's going to be something I think the community is going to be very happy about. All right, we'll go to the first slide. Talk about homelessness. Every report that I've given so far, wanted to just share that this coalition that we've started is growing. We now have about 21 partners in this, 8 units of local government, 13 nonprofits, and a for-profit will be added soon to our next meeting as well, an entity that wants to help with employment opportunities. We are focusing on specific solutions to this. We are talking about this issue basically every day, multiple times a day, and looking for a compassionate solution to address this, and a solution that will not involve tents popping up perhaps all over our city in different areas, and where it's hard to provide services, where it's hard to address those types of things, but an actual solution to this. So we are working diligently on it. And truthfully, the clock is ticking because we need to get a solution in place before the hot summer kicks in. We've had a little bit of good temperatures recently, but we know those hot temperatures are coming, and we've got to get a solution before that really hits in. So we are working hard on that, and I just wanted to share that with the council and the community. Next slide, please. The O'Neill Pool opening, the ribbon cutting was on Friday. They actually served over 1,000 people in the aquatic center over the holiday weekend, and that was with some very bad weather. So 1,000 people, they were very happy with that number. A lot of people are already enjoying that amenity. Again, just want to say congratulations to the council on that. A lot of people turned out. I picked this picture to share because it's a picture of the park staff and some of the other staff that was involved in this. And they were so proud of this pool, and they should be. Some of them brought their parents, their in-laws. They had a lot to be proud about with this project, and I just wanted to share that with the community and the council. And again, congratulations on that. Next slide. Again, a reminder that on Thursday, the Bloomington Bison will be in town at the arena at 11 o'clock. They will announce who their NHL affiliate will be. They'll also announce their head coach for the team, and there will be a former NHL player on hand, hockey player, who will sign autographs and take pictures. So certainly the community is invited to this. We're trying to get as many businesses involved into the event as well. And then, of course, any hockey fans in the council, everybody's invited to this event. We just ask that you RSVP to Anthony Nelson so that we can have a good count on the number that's going to be there. But very excited about this announcement. I think the community will be excited about it as well. Next slide. This is, we've switched, and a lot of the slides for First Fridays and the downtown events and the BCPA events are going on before and after the meeting. But I wanted to highlight that our staff is actually trying something new this summer. They will actually have First Friday concerts on the BCPA lawn every Friday, every first Friday. So the first one will be June 7th, is that right? June 7th. And these are going to be low-cost concerts, so for $5, you can attend the concert, or if you show a receipt from something that you paid for or purchased downtown, you can get in free. So this will be a trial this summer. We'll see how this goes, but yet another thing that people can do in downtown Bloomington. Next slide. And I'm actually going to ask Scott to come back up to the podium and help me explain this one. We've had some changes with the leak and line protection insurance that we have at the city that we use through a third party. There was some confusion on a letter that was sent out, and I thought it best to have Scott explain that.
Yeah, I think it best to give a little context. So through a third-party carrier, we've provided leak protection and lateral line for sewer and water, protect insurance coverages for Bob's here. He's the one that started since 2019, I believe. So it was up for renewal. The water department negotiated or had the discussions, and basically those two components were going to be decoupled, and there was going to be a large benefit related to the 25,000 accounts that we have on leak protection, where the coverage was going to go up and the cost goes down. But as part of that, the lateral line coverage, those 1,800 accounts were going to have a direct enrollment or relationship with the carrier. So there's been lots and lots of meetings, making sure that the coverage was in place, working out a timeline, approval of notification letters. And then, we kind of ran up against a little bit of a time issue. So council approved an extension to July 1st. However, a letter that had the initial June 1st effective date went out to those 1,800 residents. There was a disconnect in communications on that regard, and a notification to the city that they were going out, because we were going to provide an update on our website, social media release, press release. We're going to start doing bill inserts in all of our utility bills. So it was a little bit of a surprise. The carrier has come back, apologize. They're going to be reissuing those letters with the proper dates. But we want to get the information out to the community that their coverage, that lateral line coverage is not going to end June 1st because that letter makes it look like it's going to end June 1st. And we understand that it is going to be an inconvenience for those people. They're going to have to re-enroll with the carrier directly, and we apologize for that. But there was a very tremendous, a very high benefit on the leak protection for 25,000-ish residents, by decoupling those two. So again, there'll be another letter going out. The coverage that's in place now will stay in effect through July 1st. We've updated that piece on our website. We haven't taken all of the old information off, but it was like in red on the finance page that there was an issue. That's going to be commented on in the new letter that goes out that there was an issue related to the timing. And so communication to those residents, two direct mailings from the carrier. We'll be doing billing and bill inserts in the utility bill starting in June. And then also we'll do a press release in social media. So we're trying to get out in front of all those people. And if we get down to the line and there's a handful of those residents that we see haven't re-enrolled, we may see if we can call people. So, we're gonna try to do what's right. But I apologize for the mix-up. We tried to check all the boxes and dot all the i's and cross all the t's, and it's just one of those things that got out away from us.
Yes, perfect. So if you get calls or questions from constituents, certainly you can direct them to us, but let them know that that letter contained an incorrect date and a follow-up will be coming out. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Mayor left me with something that I was not aware of. Can I have a slide, the next slide? Is there a slide for Jesse Smart? No, okay. Well, he recently passed, and I do know that he appointed Mboka to the council 13 years ago. So I'm sure Mboka wanted to say a few words, but unfortunately he's not here, so. And the next item is council member comments. Anybody have comments? No? No? Okay. And the next item, I believe, is we're going to be going into closed session. Okay.
To discuss
Oh, yeah.
closed session.
Closed session to discuss meetings. Okay. Meeting minutes, yes. So I'll ask for a motion to enter into executive session per section 2 of C21 of 5 ILCS 120 to review closed session minutes.
So moved.
I'll second.
Voice vote?
All right. Councilmember Kearns,
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
or Mayor Pro Tem Bolin, I should have said. Councilmember Motney,
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Councilmember Hendricks.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes.
And just for the record, we will not be taking any action after closed session except for adjournment.
Okay, the executive session is beginning at 8.
So moved.
Second.
This one, I'm going to do a quick voice vote because it's a return to open session and adjourn. Councilmember Kearns,
Yes.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Matney,
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Councilmember Hendricks.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes.
No names to announce. We are adjourned.